Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Real Talking ELT. All right, real quick one. Not going to be quick. I'm going to ramble probably. Here we go. So this episode, I wanted to talk about some of the teacher training programs that I've been running, and specifically about one on becoming a teacher trainer. So I'm running this program. I'm trying to help people who would like to become teacher trainers and develop kind of their own sessions, and then they deliver the sessions and blah, blah, blah. Where I am seeing, in general, not isolating any one person, but in general, with the group, there are some new trainers or people who want to become trainers, and they have kind of like blocks to start. So, there's a great quote out there. It's like, you have to be willing to be a fool in something new. Something along those lines. I'm not very poetic, very unrefined here, but like, you have to risk being an amateur, pretty much. And everybody starts somewhere. And so that the whole purpose of the course that I was running is to allow people who are starting out to have that kind of risk-free zone to make mistakes and try something out and see how it goes and adapt something prior to putting it out, out into the world, where people are sometimes supportive and then other times just not nice at all, just not nice, overly critical and just annoying. Anyways, so what I've found is that people in this group tend to lack action. I've tried over the course is give them some orientation, some ideas, and then some actionable steps to start creating these materials and their session. But what I think is happening is that good old imposter syndrome, whatever you want to call it, where people start second guessing themselves. And I think I can offer a bit of advice, maybe a perspective on how I develop, or I go through the process of starting to develop something where I don't feel, how do I say this, uncomfortable with the content that I'm providing. And this helped me a lot in the beginning, because I always felt as if, no, this session delivered to the right people is going to be very helpful. I know that this is helpful. I know that this information is helpful. And so sometimes people start with like, okay, what do you like? And what are you interested in? And what's something in the market that needs to change? Or what's your own personal take on something? So let me start with the reason of becoming a teacher trainer. Becoming a teacher trainer is not because it's the next logical step. It's not because I want to make more money. It's not because, I don't know, like I saw someone training and I was like, I could do that. It's not because all of those silly reasons. It's a really selfless act. Like, you want to genuinely help other people. Genuinely, like, I want to help other people. I want teachers to have easier lives, because there's things that I struggled with and it was frustrating. And I know that if I had had just a little bit of support, like a little bit of help, a little bit of guidance, something more technical than like, yeah, you can do it, don't worry about it. Oh, no, that student's just ridiculous. You're doing fine. Like, something more than that, So you're getting into teacher training, hopefully, for the right reason. And then once you get into it, you say, okay, this is a huge responsibility. This is not something to be taken lightly, because if I'm training teachers and I'm telling them to do certain things, or if I'm giving them suggestions, or if I'm giving them a new perspective, or if I'm giving them an idea, which is then going to modify their courses or the lesson delivery or their techniques or stuff like that. If I'm doing that, then potentially I could be, or my influence is going to touch hundreds of students. Let that sink in for a moment. So if you start going out there and you start looking at the people who are giving sessions and it's just to stroke their ego and people don't walk away with anything, like literally you walk out of a session, I did an experiment. Let's deviate from the logical thought process for a second. I did an experiment at a recent event and I asked people, so you went to this person's speech, workshop, whatever, what did you get out of it? And every single, like no fail of the, specifically there's specific people that are just doing things because they want people to recognize them and they're just, oh my God, they're so amazing, they're so knowledgeable, I can't wait to get to that point, oh my God, you're such a role model. Like they love it, they thrive on that energy. They walk away and they say, oh, so tell me, like, what were the takeaways? Like, what are you gonna, like, what did you get out of the session? And they just summarize the session. To me, failed session. Because I don't want a watered down version of what the person said. I want to know, like, tell me, like, what's a takeaway? Because if you have a good takeaway, then I'm hooked. I'm interested. I want to take the course. I want to take the session. I want to go after this person. I want to pick their brain. But if you're just like, if teachers are walking away from your training sessions just being like, oh, they're so amazing, like they're just so knowledgeable about stuff, and they can only just reiterate a watered down version of what your presentation was, like, for unpopular opinion, for me, failed, like that you failed the assignment. Like that's not what it should be. Like people should walk away with something, a new idea, something actionable, something they can put in practice right away. That's, for me, that's a really good training session. Training. I'm talking about teacher training. Which I think maybe we should define that first, because if you're training someone, then you're usually giving them a skill. If you're giving a talk or a workshop, it's definitely going to be in the training category. If you're giving them a talk about something more idea-based, for them to kind of think about like a concept, something nebulous, something very abstract, then sure, that's fine. Then, okay, the person has to, rattle that around in their brain. But for me, I'm talking about training. Like I'm giving you the necessary tools to be able to do your job. Training. So if the person walks away and they have no takeaways, they cannot tell you exactly what they are going to do, they can't give you any actionable steps that they can take afterwards, fail. For me, fail. Because it's I'm talking about training sessions only. Because I'm just going to get hate for it. I don't fucking care anymore. Fine. All right. So training sessions, if the person's not walking away with something, you failed. My opinion. I can have it. Then so I was asking a bunch, and it's like, oh no, it's just like, oh, I told this story, and I know all about this, and the storytelling was amazing. And it's just like, that's not training. That's not helping at all. Like storytelling isn't like, what are you talking about? Oh my God. Okay. Training sessions are one thing. So it was very disappointing. And then I've seen talk to people about some courses and stuff that they're taking that are, it's like teacher trainer, right? And then it's like training session, blah, blah. And it's just like an ego stroke for someone else. They're just like, they tend to not talk with the audience, they talk at the audience. You know exactly the type of person I'm talking about too. They're just talking at you and they're trying to sound so educated and so academic and everything is so complex and it's just very convoluted. So one thing that obviously, the more of my peeves over here is that When people are training, you have to have a conversation with the participants. So you have to know where they're at. You can't talk over people. You can't talk at people. You got to talk with people. So if you're training, a group of novice teachers, it's not that you have to dumb down or water down the material. You need to take a complex idea and simplify it so that it's tangible and understandable to the person that you're speaking with, because they may not have the knowledge base or the experience to make it relatable on their own. You have to do that. Complexity does not mean complicated. If you're like, oh, well, it's complicated. If somebody tells me, oh, well, it's complicated, maybe that's why you didn't understand, maybe there's a miscommunication because it's complicated, and be like, yeah, if it's complicated, that means you don't understand it well enough. I know my limitations. I'm not going to talk about certain things because I don't understand them well enough. Complex does not mean complicated. If you're training teachers and you're talking with them, not at them, and you have a complex idea, you have to know the information well enough to be able to simplify that idea that anyone who walks into your training session will be able to walk away and with understanding of that complex idea. You cannot just poo-poo it away and say, oh, it's complicated. Somebody walks away from a training session, my training session, saying, well, it's really complicated. I don't really understand everything. I have not done my job. Okay, rant over. No, so that for me is like examples of just failing your audience, failing other teachers, failing your mission and objective of being a teacher trainer. Like, you're trying to help people with something that will make their teaching practice, their professional lives easier, simplified, less complicated. And you're not doing it. All right, so let's get to the advice part. A little less of Kelly complaining, but the advice part of it is that when I'm creating sessions, and this has always been really helpful for me, I always think of who is the audience. And immediately teachers think that the audience is the teachers, the people who are participating. And I would posit and I would propose that that is wrong. That's a wrong assumption, because the audience for me is students. As a language teacher, the only thing that matters in my day-to-day life is students. That's it. That's it. So if you pinpoint problems, complications, frustrations, resistance, complaints, behavioral issues with students, you know exactly who and what you're going to do for your training session. So let's find a student behavior, or let's find a resistance. Adult students, for example, do not like to do homework. They don't. They've got lives. They don't want to do homework. So this is the thing. I've got adult students who are resistant to do self-study things outside of their classrooms. Now, I immediately know who my participants in my session are going to be. This is a hypothetical thing. I'm just making it up as I go, all right? Adult students, resistance to homework. Then all of the teachers that have adult students who don't do their homework, or you have challenges of them engaging in English outside of their regular classes. Those are the teachers that are going to be participating in this imaginary training session that I'm creating right now with you. Then I have to come up with something like, if I'm talking to teachers who have students who have resistance to homework, I need to give them something actionable. I need to give them something concrete, something that they can do, because I can't just say, oh, this is why. Oh, let's have a therapy session. Everybody complains about their students together. No. Okay, so if students have resistance to homework, maybe we can go in lots of different directions. We can talk about motivation. We can talk about lots of different things. I'm not going to sit here and plan it because I wouldn't be able to do it in any effective way that would be beneficial for you to listen to me doing that now. But so you have to come up with actionable things. So what are the takeaways? Well, they're going to have, I don't know, 4 different techniques or suggestions or checklists or types of activities that they can propose to those students. They have, I don't know, some sort of behavioral change. Maybe we're talking about habit trackers or something like, whatever you want to do, but they have to walk away with something that they can then implement. And then you just plan backwards from that. But the thing about teacher trainers, and I think where new teacher trainers get stuck, is they're just like, oh God, what can I do? What should I, like, what topic? And they always are searching for topics. And then sometimes people are like, well, what are you interested in? What do you like? But that might not be anything that's going to be beneficial for the average teacher, because if you're training teachers, it's the average teacher, that workhorse, that person that just day to day is grinding with students, going to classes, prepping materials, following up. That's your person. They might have a different niche. They might be, working with different audiences of students and stuff like that, but those are your people. If you're doing teacher training, those are your people. So yeah, you can have sessions and other things about theories and stuff, but if you're training them, I need to get their minds focused on very specific issues they're having in the classroom. I need them to think about how to effectively apply this perspective, this new methodology, this scientific fact or revelation, this thing from linguistics or neurology and neuroscience and all of that stuff. Or I need them to look at different techniques, different frameworks. I need them to work on project-based learning. I need them to be able to do something. But at the end of the day, if I'm training them, I'm trying to give them skills and something concrete that they're going to be able to do in their classroom. That's one thing that I think teachers freak out about. They're like, what do I do? Think about your students. Think about your students. Because more often than not, your students' issues are not unique to you. It's universal issues that we have with students. So let's try and solve those universal problems. Why not? That is a very, I think, easy way to kind of get into teacher training. And then when you want to broaden your topics and you want to start talking about more theoretical things, or if you want to stay very practical, or if you want to do this and if you want to kind of expand, or you want to specialize and just do one thing, fine. But things always need to relate to students. That's the audience. Your participants are your teachers that teach those students. So, and then my other tip that I can give for people looking for to become teacher trainers is to prepare yourself. That sounded ominous, but it wasn't meant to be ominous. No, prepare yourself. In preparation builds confidence. When you are not sure about what you're going to do, because for various reasons, right? So we're not sure what you're going to do because, oh God, people are going to ask me questions. Prepare yourself. So at that point, if you're talking about practical things and all of that good stuff, try to not limit your research to the only things that are going to stay on the slides. Try to expand a little bit so that you have information that is related. You don't have to include it on the slides, but you have to be knowledgeable about the general area. Because teachers are funny little creatures that will, and it's because everybody sees everything through their own lens. I see things through my lens, and my lens and my perspective is a culmination of my past experiences, right? And so I see things through this, and I make connections based on my past experience and my thought process. So my recommendation is that when you're going through and doing the research, like kind of like the background reading and looking for options and all of that type of stuff. Look for things that you won't include in your presentation. Not because you need to have all of the knowledge. Don't go too broad. But because sometimes teachers make an unexpected connection. And and they'll ask a question or they'll make a comment and it will leave you feeling very uncomfortable because you're just generally unaware of that. I mean, you can just be honest. A line to be honest would be like, oh, I was going in this direction with my research, but yeah, I guess you could make that connection too. It was just something that I'm not well informed about because I went more in this direction, but I can see how you can make that connection. I mean, because that happens. People connect ideas in all sorts of different ways. And so just kind of broadening your research. I think that's when people say, oh my God, they're going to ask me questions. Yeah, they might ask you questions about stuff that you don't know. Like that might happen. And it's like, oh, I haven't really dug into that. Like, just be honest. Like teacher trainers are not like the wealth of knowledge is it. Sometimes they have like lots of knowledge, but sometimes, it's very specialized and it's just in one direction. So yeah, I would just be honest with that. But I think being prepared in terms of looking at things that you've decided to exclude for timing reasons, for cohesive reasons in terms of the presentation that you're about to give or whatever, then that makes sense for me because you can at least respond. You can at least respond. It doesn't have to be an extensive response and like a, complete explanation, you're an expert. No, but at least you can, with some competency, react to a comment or a question. So, yeah, it was just a thought that I had because some of these new teacher trainers that are coming out of these courses, I think they're fearful, they're fearful of being, well, criticized by their peers, but I think they're fearful of the unknown and not being, you're never going to be an expert like starting out doing anything. So it's just like that first day teaching, you get really anxious and you don't know what's going to happen. And now that you've been doing it for a while, like you're fine. You don't really panic when you go into any classroom or your first day getting observed by, a person on a course or a superior in an organization. And then after a while, it just doesn't really faze you. And you're like, yeah, okay, it's been happening for a while. So it's going to happen. Every time you start a new thing, you're not going to be an expert in it. But I think those are the two things that I would say is like the best advice that I can give to new teacher trainers. 1, don't be an asshole. Don't stroke your ego. That's not what teacher training is about. 2, always focus on students. Start there. That's the easiest way to start developing some of the sessions that you want to run. And 3, be prepared. Go a little bit beyond what you're actually going to deliver just so you feel comfortable. I think those are the three tips of the day. That's it, but I will continue to do more stuff about training sessions and blah, blah, all that type of stuff. More episodes to come. That's it for today. Thank you. See ya.